secular as an ideology is more to do with liberalism, more to do with progressive psyche, more to do with seculum, which means worldly. And Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan has very rightly said that our secularism distinguishes from the West. Okay, secular, undoubtedly, there are some political reasons also. That is why demands are being made with respect to socialist. But the Constitution of India, you see Article 38, social, economic, and political justice. 39C, operation of economic system should not result in concentration of wealth.
So, secularism, is it a Western word? Yes, in its origin, yes. Socialism, is it a Western word in its origin? Yes, it is. Non-justiciable directive principles of state policy contain Gandhian principles, socialist principles. Amartya Sen has referred to as argumentative Indian. We argue, we learn, we correct our mistakes, we imbibe ideas, but all that happens in the spirit of our own context.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Perspective series by Vision IS. Recently there has been a debate around two important words of Indian preamble, that is socialist and secular. As we all know, preamble is an introduction to Indian Constitution. It talks about the basic philosophy of the Indian Constitution. All constitutional articles, text has been inspired by this particular philosophy. So we gave to ourselves this constitution in the year 1950. Everything was fine until 1976 when through 42nd Amendment Act, two new words, that is socialist and secular, were added to the Indian preamble. Now the question starts here. Was India not socialist? Was India not secular in the year 1950? If it was, then what was the need of adding it in the year 1976? So all such questions, all such nuances we are going to get to know through this discussion, joined by the eminent panel members, Anjani Sir and Amil Sir. Very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you.
So, sir, first question to you, Anjani Sir. As I discussed, in 1976, we added these two words. And again, it was coincidentally, it was the era of emergency as well. So, can you help us understand what was the need of adding these two words in the year 1976?
So, Paritosh, if we look at that era, we would realize that we were close to near certain milestones. 25 years of independence, 25 years of the constitution coming into effect. And the debate in our body politic in institutions like the legislature and outside of it, relation between various organs of the government, such as the judiciary or the legislature or the executive, were out in the open. And if we look at the start of the 1970s, what we find is this is an era where the political slogan of Garibi Hatao was a primary slogan, and there was a need felt for looking into how the constitution can be made to work better. Right? From time to time this happens. After 1967, for example, on the matter of defection, the Y.B. Chavan committee looked into certain constitutional questions. So in this case, what we are looking at is a major constitutional amendment, which is the 42nd Amendment, and its genesis lies in what is called the 1975 Komagata Maru session of the Congress, where a resolution of such an effect was passed that in order to fulfill certain socio-economic or politico-economic prerogatives or objectives, we need to look into whether the constitution can be made to work better. And subsequently, in 1976, a committee, and we have to remember that that committee was formed by the party in power, the Congress party at that point in time. The Swaran Singh committee is constituted, and that committee recommends a whole range of ideas, which then galvanizes into 42nd Amendment, which comes to the Parliament in October 1976 as a bill, and then in December 1976 the presidential assent is there, and 1977 January it comes into effect. Now the 42nd Amendment is very expansive in its scope. So it not only did make change to the preamble per se, but it touched upon various aspects of the constitution, from questions of fundamental rights to directive principles of state policy to matters such as tribunal, etc. Now, in this whole inclusion of two words, socialism and secularism, as part of the preamble, are of particular notice because preceding that there was a debate as to the importance of the preamble. And by the time the Kesavananda Bharati case or the judgment in 1973 came, in that judgment, the court made it clear that preamble is part of the constitution and preamble is subject to the parliament's power of amendment. Now, such an amendment, what would be its impact, would always remain debatable. But the inclusion of the word socialist and secular has to be seen in terms of the political churning that was happening in that particular country, whereby the ruling party in power was definitely facing certain challenges, and some of its steps, most importantly, most notably declaration of emergency in India, were widely condemned. So the 42nd Amendment coincided with the political churn in this particular country, and in that atmosphere, inclusion of the words socialist and secular became debatable, so to say. It is not that India's constitution didn't have secular features or socialist feature before this. It was just that the well thought out debate in the Constituent Assembly resulted in a constitution where these words were not necessarily felt, the need was not felt for them to be included in the preamble explicitly, right? So this political atmosphere and this era has to be remembered as a context. So thereby the accusation became that this inclusion, as other aspects of 42nd Amendment, are more politically motivated, are to favor a certain kind of politico-ideological setup rather than to bring about any effective change in the actual functioning of the constitution as far as it affected the socio-economic conditions.
Thank you, sir. You have given a good reasoning that what exactly was the reason that of adding these two words now. Now my question to you, sir, as I discussed, preamble contains the philosophy of the constitution, and again, as sir has discussed, there were certain features, and this socialist and secular feature was implicitly there in the Indian constitution, but explicitly it was added in that amendment, right? What was the need, as sir has discussed, and can you guide us that how exactly these socialist and secular principles were implicit in the Indian constitution?
See, the present, when we go into the philosophical reasons behind the term socialist and secular, undoubtedly, first of all, secularism, secular as an ideology is more to do with liberalism, more to do with progressive psyche, more to do with seculum, which means worldly. So in fact, secularism is good for all the religions. Okay, so those who are presently opposing secularism, they don't understand that if the state is not secular, then it may interfere with their religions also. So actually, secular is good for all the religions. Now the debate about the Western secularism and Indian, I'm not going into that, but without a shadow of doubt, the Constitution of India from day one is secular. You see Article 15 Clause 1, the state shall not discriminate on the basis of religion. Article 16 Clause 2, in matters of public employment on the basis of religion. Article 25, all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience. Article 28, which is my most favorite article, Clause 1, that no religious instruction shall be imparted in an education. So the idea of secularism was embedded in the Constitution from day one. As sir very beautifully and rightly said, it was the political happening and the psyche which led to the incorporation of term secular. In fact, if you see from 1969, you have nationalization of bank, privy purse abolition, Garibi Hatao slogan, and all the literature, even in the form of video literature, movies and all that were being made, that were having socialist churnings, and to an extent there was a what you call some communal what you call fangs, and also the government thought this. Undoubtedly, when these amendments are made, there are political what you call aspects of that also, but without deviating from the topic, one, the idea of secularism is deeply embedded in Indian civilization, and Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan has very rightly said that our secularism distinguishes from the West. Okay, so we practice positive secularism where the state maintains an equidistance. So even if the term secular is removed from the preamble, then also the idea of secularism will not get defeated. And that too, the Indian civilization carries this ethos since time immemorial. Okay, so you see so many articles, and although the Supreme Court on 11th March 1994 Kesavananda Bharati case, or in SR Bomai case, and 24th April 1973 SR Bomai Kesavananda Bharati case, both the cases ruled that secularism is a part of basic structure. So, and related to socialism, you know, two things are there. One, secular, undoubtedly there are some political reasons also, that is why demands are being made. With respect to socialist, first of all, see, the Constituent Assembly was very clear that we are not going to impose an ideology upon the future generations by explicitly mentioning the term socialist in the preamble. But the Constitution of India, you see Article 38, social, economic and political justice, minimize inequalities in income. Article 39B, material resources shall be subserve the common good. 39C, operation of economic system should not result in concentration of wealth. So undoubtedly you see Article 41, Article 42, maternity relief, also 43A, participation of workers in the management of industries, undertakings and all. So undoubtedly the socialist principles were there in the Constitution even before the term socialist was added, as Sir very beautifully articulated. Some socialist principles were added also. Just Article 39A was added, 42nd Amendment, which is free legal aid, operation of legal system should promote justice. Article 43A was added, this was added, term socialist was added. So we can conclude one, key two recent judgments of Supreme Court. One, Balram Singh judgment that was delivered, I think 25th November 2024. In that, Supreme Court rejected this petition that these two words were added during the emergency, so they should be removed and all. And one very important judgment, that was Property Owners Association versus what you call State of Maharashtra last year. In that, I think 9-judge bench has, if you read the judgment, they have clearly said that was one of the most important judgment on socialism, that Article 31C vis-a-vis interpretation of Article 39B, which says material resources of the community shall be so distributed that it subserve the common good. So this term material resources, Supreme Court said, does not mean private material resources. So we cannot take away the land and distribute what was it. So not always the private material resources. Our socialism promotes welfareism. Our socialism does not insist on state ownership. There will be Industrial Credit Investment Corporation of India, ICICI, and State Bank of India. There will be Housing and Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation and Bank of Baroda. There will be public as well as private sector. But yes, and Supreme Court has never ruled that socialism is a part of basic structure. If you meticulously see, they have always said that welfareism is a part of basic structure. But our socialism undoubtedly is different from the Western socialism, where there is no insistence on state ownership. One last thing, that the principal mandate of socialism is generally understood that means of production shall be collectively owned by the society. Yani things would be nationalized, major sectors of economy government will command. The final goal is to minimize inequalities. Okay, the final goal is to minimize inequalities. So our socialism will also minimize inequality, but our socialism will not be revolutionary, evolutionary, through democratic principles. And last but not the least, in an era of liberalization, undoubtedly the state control over multiple sectors of economy, the demand for more what you call productivity and more quality based services, undoubtedly the state is retreating. So I think that this debate more or less Supreme Court has already settled about the secular as well as socialist aspect. This is more of a political debate rather than having major impact on the policy making of the state.
Certainly, you will be very clear that again, yes, it was something which was there in the Constitution and it was just a political move, I can say, in the year 1976, and it did not alter anything in the Constitution altogether, right? Now, coming to you, sir, Indian Constitution is inspired by constitutions of different parts of the world, you very rightly know. So, the feature of socialism and secularism, of course, these are borrowed from Western countries. So, but their understanding and the nature of socialism which India has, the nature of secularism what India has, is different from the Western context. So, how exactly Indian socialism, Indian secularism is different from the Western model of secularism and socialism is there?
So, Paritosh, now this question itself, the answer to this question itself can open into various directions. The question of philosophy, the question of culture, the question of history. But we have to accept the fact that certain ideas emphasized in certain ways in Western educational institutions, in Western debates, had an impact on the freedom fighters, on the founding fathers. So we can't say that we suddenly came up with something original and started to build on it. And that's the beauty of the Constitution. We took things from around the world, and that goes along with Indian civilizational ethos also. But we made it work or fit our context. Now, if you read the great commentators on the Constitution from Granville Austin to others, they all have made this point that we Indians made a constitution fitting our circumstances. So, secularism, is it a Western word? Yes, in its origin, yes. Socialism, is it a Western word in its origin? Yes, it is. But the way we look at secularism has a very rich tradition. You can go back to the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That beautifully encompasses both secularism and socialism in the way we can understand it broadly. Secondly, if we see among our founding fathers, if you look at, for example, there is a book, The Constitutional Identity of India, Professor Biddu Chakravarti. He says, while Nehru, Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru presented an idea of secularism which was Western in notion, certainly his starting point was Western, but then this notion is also articulated in traditional senses. So on the one hand, in some contexts, we can understand that figures like Jawaharlal Nehru were presenting a modernist view inspired by the Western connotation of the word secularism, or to that matter, socialism. On the other hand, we have Mahatma Gandhi, who is borrowing from Indian traditions, and his notion of secularism would be Sarvadham Sambhav, which is rooted in the civilizational identity. So now these are words or political philosophy, political theory concepts which can be debated in different ways. But there is no doubt that if we say socialism, we are not referring to the Soviet state controlled socialism. We are not referring to any doctrinaire form of socialism. We are looking at how in India our task is to ensure that people come out of poverty, that state becomes a bulwark against social ills. So state has an important role in promoting ideals such as liberty as well as equality. When you are trying to balance ideals such as liberty and equality, you cannot go into absolutes. So there is a bargain which is happening. So I would simply say that if we have to understand socialism or secularism, we have to look into the Constituent Assembly debate, where the extremes were avoided, where the spirit was understood, and the original constitution itself in the form of non-justiciable directive principles of state policy contained Gandhian principles, socialist principles in terms of Article 25, and one should read Article 25 completely to understand Indian form of secularism. That there is respect for all religions. It is not a strict separation of church and state as in the case of Europe after the medieval times. State retains a role to have a say even in matters which would seem religious when it comes to welfare, when it comes to rights. So Indian form of secularism has been acknowledged as a distinct form, and this is something that we have achieved. Whether these words, their place in the constitution, they should be there in the preamble or not, is it open to debate or not? We are a democracy, and as the constitution makers, most notably Dr. Ambedkar, had said that it is for the future generations to decide what form of government, what form of economic organization they would like to have. So we have to see it in the spirit of what Amartya Sen has referred to as argumentative Indian. We argue, we learn, we correct our mistakes, we imbibe ideas, but all that happens in the spirit of our own context. All right. And as Granville Austin says very beautifully, the credit goes to the Indians. We gave ourselves a constitution, we have made it work. Has the journey been perfect? The answer is no. But then we have done it substantially well.
So now we are clear that yes, we have adopted Indian model of socialism, we have adopted Indian model of secularism, right? Now, Amil sir, why this debate on a contemporary time, where again we have been seeing that is something it has happened in the 1976, why this debate, or maybe the idea of adding these two words, come again and again in the news. What is its relevance in the contemporary times?
See, it is largely metaphorical because you see, as Sir said that positive, you see it is very well established that first of all, the mass is more about metaphor, more about identity politics. Okay. So it is very clearly the constitution, for example, Article 27, it says, no person shall be compelled to pay taxes, the proceeds of which shall be specifically appropriated for the promotion of any particular religion. So the term particular is the most important term in Article 27. They could have written, no person shall be compelled to pay taxes for the promotion of any religion, but they have written particular religion. It means tax money can be used for the promotion of all the religions equally. So Indian secularism may, the state does, even in Article 25, there is not an absolute right. It says subject to public order, morality and health. Nietzsche, it says that nothing can prevent the state from throwing open Hindu religious institutions for all classes and sections of Hindus. So the state can interfere. But the point is, first of all, India is a very, very diverse country. There is no doubt about that. So different ideas come, and that is the beauty of our country. I feel that it is more about political thing, that what you call secular term, that even if it is removed, I don't find a single reason that it will have an impact, because still if there is a law that discriminates on the basis of religion, it will be stricken down under Article 14, Article 15, if in public employment, Article 16, so many. Regarding socialist, okay, because you know the idea of this is undoubtedly there is a what you call inequality, a lot of inequality that has to be undone. Okay, that has to be undone. So on the one hand, we see the rich population, and there is still a lot the state has to do when it comes to what you call. So we cannot just allow the market forces to decide. Okay, so this very term socialist, which is more welfareist in nature, from cradle to grave, the state has to take care of the citizens especially. So I strongly feel that that balance has to be there. The more problem I see not with the term socialist, because the term socialist was added with secular, so when they say secular, they also add socialist, because the very political forces that are vying for changes, they also would be shying away when it comes to social. I'll give you an example, that Land Acquisition Act 1894 was completely changed in right to fair compensation, rehabilitation and resettlement, and Transparency in Land Acquisition Act 2013. Among the first few ordinances that the term public interest in the new law was modified, and 2 times the ordinance could not get passed by the parliament. This was among the very few instances where the government allowed the ordinance to lapse, because a message was going outside that the government wants to favor the capitalists. Otherwise, they usually get the laws passed. They allowed the ordinance to lapse. So it is not about the term socialist. Basically, it will continue till the time, as Sir said, that our principal mandate is to eliminate poverty. Okay, that is Niti Aayog mein you can see the resolution of 1st January 20. They write that we need to eliminate. We are no longer happy with alleviation of poverty. We want to eliminate. It is with the term secular. I feel the term secular is good for everyone, because the deviation from the term secular state will interfere. Today it may interfere in yours, tomorrow it may interfere with some. So I think the neutrality with some patronizing or some spiritual quest that the religion provides can be done. So conclusion may I would say that these two terms, I think they are what you call symbol of what the constitution is. So there is no harm in they being into the preamble.
So making it more clearer for the students and the viewers, I would like to second you on this. Maybe is it right to say that again? Yes, Indian secularism or socialism was there in the constitution altogether, and the constitution makers did not wanted to confuse the people of the day, or that in the year 1950, that again they might get confused whether we are adopting a Western model of secularism or a Western model of socialism or not, and that is why they did not added these two words explicitly in the year 1950. But again, in the addition was just a mere political significance. It does not change anything about the Indian way of secularism and socialism.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Thank you so much. So viewers, we got a clarity today that yes, in spite of these two words being in debate, that again whether they are a part of Indian constitution or the preamble or not, one thing we got clear that again yes, even if we remove these two words, it does not change India being a secular state or India being a socialist state. So thank you so much for watching us today, and keep watching the Perspective series by Vision IS.